This podcast is designed to help with your recovery from any mental issue you are up against. The show strives to give you information that really, for real, works. The podcast interviews real people that have recovered or are managing their mental health. We also talk to people that offer suggestions and coping mechanisms you may want to try. Bob Adelman, the host of OTR, shares his 50 years of struggles with mental illness and the techniques of recovery. He is still on his journey, as you can hear in the episode called Perfect Storm: Fighting Demons. So, help him fight this monster called mental illness and the stigma that goes with it.
Great job as always, Amanda. How you doing out there? This is Bob Adelman, and we are at OTR, Achieving Mental Health for Real. Today we have a special guest. His name is Ryan Cunningham. He's a comedian. Now, depression's not funny, but sometimes to take some of the power away from its grip, it's good to laugh. It's good to laugh a little bit. So today, maybe we will. And maybe that will cheer us up a little bit. And every little bit helps. So Ryan, he had some bouts at a younger age and also later on in his life. One time he couldn't sleep, so he took a whole bottle of sleeping pills and he didn't really care if he was going to wake up. Fortunately, he did for us, and we get to hear him and hear about his child and hear about his recovery and listen to some of his jokes. So it should be a really, really good show. Okay, so here is the interview. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Bob?
Good to have you here. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a stand-up comedian. I've been doing that for I think going on 7 or 8 years now. I also teach martial arts to kids, so that's pretty cool. And got a family, got a little daughter. She's going to be 2 soon. Birthday coming up in just a few days, so pretty excited for that.
That's great. I took karate. I'm actually a black belt.
Oh, are you? What style?
Harangdo. Nobody's ever heard of it. It's Korean.
Yeah, I have to look it up. That's awesome. Like you said, I've never heard of it, but I came from a pretty an interesting style as well as Ishinryu karate, and so it's getting more popular, but it's also relatively vague as well. Not a ton of people have heard of it either. So
you live in Raleigh now?
I do live in Raleigh. I moved here when did I move here? Actually, it's been about a year now. I moved here, I think, around December 18th or 20th, right before Christmas last year. So yeah, okay. I've been in Raleigh for about a year.
And where did you grow up?
Oh man, that is a loaded question. I grew up all over
everywhere.
Yeah, okay. My parents were divorced, so and my dad was in the Navy. So I spent a lot of time in Virginia and Missouri. Those are probably the two most central locations in my life, but all over Virginia, from Newport News, Shenandoah Valley, Northern Virginia, and then Missouri, St. Louis, some really small towns with literally one stoplight, and then a couple of other states here and there in between, Florida, so yeah, kind of all over the place.
Okay. We were talking before the show about your battles with depression. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, I don't really remember the first time really feeling when I was depressed. I think I was, the times that I can remember where it was bad was definitely growing up when I was younger. I think about 11, 12 years old was because it was sort of a transitioning time for me where, me and my mom were always very close. Mm-hmm. And she had a lot of different, relationships with men. And most of them were not very serious, just flings here and there. And then she met somebody, my now stepdad, and they've been married for, I think, going on 10 years or something like that. So it's worked out better than some of her other ones. But when he came into the picture, I kind of lost that same attachment that me and her had. We used to watch TV together, and
How old were you then?
probably 11 or 12, or
Okay.
maybe even younger. I could have been 10. It's
Hmm.
hard to pinpoint it
Hmm.
exactly when they met. I think it was definitely under 12. I remember we were living in Richmond at the time.
Hmm.
Um, but, we had a little ritual, and it was kind of just me and her. And then, this other guy swooped in and kind of like, made me feel almost abandoned in a sense.
Hmm.
Um, so between that and then, me and my dad didn't have, a great relationship. He just was never an emotional guy. So, it's hard for me to find that anywhere. I felt like I'd never had it with my dad, felt like I lost it with my mom. And then, that's kind of when I started, battling depression, and would really
Yeah.
just do whatever I could to get attention. Because I felt like anytime I had attention, that kind of started to make it feel a little bit better, was
Yeah.
if people were paying attention to me, which I guess is, ultimately why I kind of started getting into comedy.
Yeah. My kids were young when I got divorced. They were 10, 8, and 3.
Mm.
So I've always had a little bit of a guilt complex about it. I don't think there was any way to repair the marriage, but I just really felt bad for them because I
Yeah,
know it's got to be a shock to children.
and I think, I don't think my parents' divorce is necessarily to blame for anything. Yeah, I mean, it's of course, there's a contributing factor to all of my psychology, the fact that that happened. But I also don't, I'm not mad at my parents at all for, like, I
Hmm.
would rather my situation had been what it was growing up than like them be in an unhappy marriage for no reason. Either way, I
Right.
was going to get screwed up, whether it was because they were together or whether it was because they were apart. It's just, like, how am I? I'll just screwed up differently. And as long as you can find a way to work that into your personality, then you can kind of make it work for you. But
Yeah.
it's definitely, yeah, it's a tough situation as somebody in a marriage, and just as a kid growing up and seeing it from the outside too.
Do you have any siblings?
So I have a split family. My mom's been married multiple times. I think she's been married 5 times. My dad has been married twice, but I believe he's going to be getting married. He's in a long-term relationship with somebody else, and they have a
Hmm.
child together. So all together, stepbrothers, stepsisters, half siblings. I have 14 siblings.
Okay. I was the youngest of 4, and of course, it was hard for me to get attention. And I'd like to be funny. I'm more of a not sarcastic, dry humor.
Yeah,
So dry that a lot of people don't get me sometimes. I'm joking, and it gets me into a little bit of trouble.
I've
Do you do? Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say I've been in that same spot. Most of what I do is pretty dark. Um,
Oh,
I don't. I really don't. I try not to shy away from anything, and
okay.
I'm pretty deadpan. Um, so, and I talk about my family a lot too. I talk about my family and like my situation growing up, and um, even I've cracked jokes about depression. So I've been in that situation too, where you say something and you're like, oh man, I hope this goes all right, and then and then it doesn't. So.
I take it you do stand-up comedy, right?
Yes, sir. And I mean, I do skits and stuff too, but stand up is kind of that's my favorite thing to do. But I'll do skits, I'll do a little bit of everything. I've even done a couple
Yeah.
of parody songs and things like that. But stand up is really where the passion is.
I have a little bit of acting blood in me, but I'm a little too shy, I think, to go up there and try a comedy
Well,
routine. Although
yeah,
I've thought about it.
it's really interesting because you kind of start to see that that's what a lot of the personalities are there is, and I mean, I'm not that at all. I'm definitely more of an extroverted kind of person, but a lot of the people that I have performed with, I mean, off stage, completely shy, would probably never approach somebody in public. And that's what's nice about stand up is that it can get you out of that out of your normal persona, and
Hmm.
gives you the ability to kind of be somebody else for a while. Or for me, it's really therapy for me, because there's just the stuff that I say. It's like, okay, I have these thoughts in my head. I can get it out by going up on stage and making a joke about it. And then also making a joke about it also just kind of takes the power away from the situation and makes you feel a little bit better as well.
Okay. So you didn't have any kind of a major type of depression, anxiety. You had mild depression as a teenager would have, pretty much.
Well, I did in my time dealing with depression, I did have I got really bad insomnia as well.
Hmm.
And with that insomnia, I ended up getting sleeping pills. And as the depression got worse, the insomnia got worse. And, to the point where eventually I just ended up taking my entire bottle of sleeping pills halfway, because, it was just like, well, what is, you know, I number one, I just wanted to sleep. Number two, I was like, oh, worst case scenario, I'm sleeping forever.
Hmm.
So it wasn't necessarily, I don't necessarily look at it as a suicide attempt, but it was to the point where if that had happened, I, you know, I knew that was a consequence of taking all the pills, and I didn't care that much.
Yeah, so you were pretty down. It sounds like it.
Oh yeah.
Did you have any history in your family of like your father, mother, grandparents?
Yeah, I mean, I think my mom has something. I think both of my parents, if I were to guess as a psychology major, I think my dad probably has a little antisocial personality disorder.
I could relate to that a lot. I have ADHD and it's pretty bad. So I have to be
Yeah.
very careful not to interrupt people and change the subject midstream and things like that. But go on.
Yeah, and I just think, and my mom, I think I don't know if she necessarily has depression. Um, as close as we are, it's something that looking back on, I've never even thought about,
Mhm.
um, or tried to see if there are any signs of that, or what. But there are. I mean, she doesn't. It's hard for her to keep a job or a stable relationship. She's struggled a lot of her life with various different things. Um, and she can be manipulative, and I don't know if it's depression or what exactly it is with her, but there's definitely something, but I couldn't give her a diagnosis off the cuff.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people with anxiety that they really could get help if they took a little bit of medicine in that time period where they're anxious, and then they go off and on if they want. I'm not a strong believer in medicine because it saved my life. Basically,
Yeah.
I was completely. You can talk about it. You can make fun of me because I was like in the corner, in a fetal position, and just nobody talks to me. I can't stand any.
From
So
anxiety or depression?
both. It was.
Both.
They come together usually. I still have a lot of performance anxiety, and
Mm.
believe it or not, I do this radio show. I feel better talking now than I do if I was face to face with you.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so what I did find is that for me, while since my daughter's been born, I really haven't struggled with depression too much anymore. However, my anxiety has become almost obsessive to the
mhm.
point where, for example, my wife one day left our apartment window open, and it's a bay window, so the baby could have just crawled out of it.
Mhm.
And we're on the second story, and I mean, I obsessed over that
Mhm.
for months. Just, is the window open? Is the
Yeah.
and even though I yelled, not, I shouldn't say I yelled at my wife, but I probably did. But I got into it with her over this. Like I freaked out and I just could not let it go. The fact
Mhm.
that the window was open and it's like that with everything. I used to not be afraid of anything. And now it's like I don't want to go to the beach because I'm worried like about sharks, which has never been a concern for mine. But now that I have a daughter, and I just it's not even about me. It's about how would her life be if she lost me,
Yeah.
or how would my life be if I lost her? And that makes me so incredibly anxious, and I just obsess over it.
Yeah. So what do you talk about on your skit? I mean, on your how long does it usually last?
It just depends. I mean, right now if I'm doing all of the material that I have right now, about 30 minutes.
Okay.
Um, okay, hold on. If I do all of the good material I have right now, then about 30 minutes. I've got a lot of crap and a lot of stuff that I'm still working on. And I could probably push it to an hour, but it would be like not a very good hour. I have 30 minutes that are pretty good. But, it just depends on what you get hired for. There's some shows they only want you to do 5 minutes. Some you do 10. Some you do the entire 30. And then one thing that's interesting about being a comedian is no matter how good you get, you're always still working, kind of working out something new. You've got these
Hmm.
big time guys like, Bill Burr, John Mulaney, Dave Chappelle, all these guys, like as someone who's a smaller comic, I could potentially, if I went to New York and was doing the same open mic nights as most of the other comedians there's a good chance I could bump into like, one of those John Mulaney's or Dave Chappelle's or
Hmm.
someone big like that because they still have to try out new jokes, which is part of the excitement is that you never know how a joke is going to do until you actually do it in front of somebody and get the audience response. It might bomb, it might do awesome. There's jokes I've had that in my mind I'm like, this is the best joke I've ever written, and then I go up there and no one likes it, and then I have
And what
jokes I can think of
do
one
you
joke.
like panic? I'm sorry. Do you like panic when it goes bad, or you just roll on?
I used to when I was beginning, like when I first started. If a joke bombed, then I would immediately forget everything else. Um, Now I've been doing it so long to the point where if it doesn't go well, I've done 20 minutes to a entirely silent audience, like just doing so badly one night. I think it was in like southern Georgia, a big like Bible Belt community, and
Hmm.
I was just doing so badly. And I did the set the same way I would do it if I was getting a bunch of laughs. So yeah, back in the early days, it was rough. If one joke didn't do well, then that was the end of it for me. Now
Did
it
you get heckled at all?
Rarely. I think,
Okay.
I actually kind of like it now. I used to hate it. Um, but some of my best stuff has come from some heckles. There's a bit that I
Hmm.
do where I compare country music and rap music together, and I start talking about that song, "Come and Take a Ride on My Big Green Tractor,"
Hmm.
and this lady in the crowd goes, "Gross," and I'm like, "What's gross?" And she's like, "The tractor, it's green." And I'm like, "Okay." It's like, that's just the weirdest heckle I've ever heard. And then I'm like, "So you're more of a Kubota girl, huh? Like you only fuck guys who ride orange tractors." And so stuff like that happens. And so I've had a couple of hecklers, but it's usually pretty fun. Every once in a while there's somebody who gets like offended, and then those are the ones where it's a little annoying. There was one day in Florida where I was doing a show at like it was near FSU in Tallahassee, and so really super liberal community, which hey is not a bad thing. I've got people
Hmm.
on both sides of the spectrum, um, but it was like Gay Pride Month, and so I made a joke that was like, "Hey, do I have any LGBTQ?" ACD, and then just kept kind of going through the alphabet.
Hmm.
And there was a gay couple in the crowd, and they got upset about it. And I was like, and they were like, "Oh, you don't, that's homophobic or something like that." And I was like, I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm a comedian. I'm just kidding. And
Yeah.
that kind of shut him up. And then the funny thing was that a guy who came to be a good friend of mine, his parents were in the crowd and they were a lesbian couple, and they were like, "We love the joke." So you're gonna always have somebody who's gets mad about that stuff. You just gotta say whatever. Don't can't listen to the haters.
Yeah. My biggest problem is I'll get really nervous beforehand, and then when I have to do it, I'm calm.
Yeah, that's kind of
Because
how I get through it.
the adrenaline goes to my head or something.
Yeah,
And if I know what I'm talking about, then I'm very calm. So
yeah. I'll go in like I'll pace back and forth, just like just preparing. There's actually a really good show on HBO, or was on HBO, called Crashing, um, which was about Pete Holmes' like rise to stardom. And one of the scenes had John Mulaney, and he's about to go on stage, and he's just going like, "Why am I doing this? I hate this. I hate this. I hate stand-up comedy." And then he gets out there and he's killing it. And it's like, yeah, that's how I get too. Is I'm just like, all right, I can't. Why am I doing this again? And then I get out there and I'm like, oh yeah, it's because I rock. No, um,
yeah.
but and then there's also times where, you know, one thing that really helps me, and this is going to sound terrible, is that if somebody goes up before me, like if I always like to be the first person because I like to set the tone. But if I'm not, and there's 4 or 5 people on before me, I just want them to just do terribly, because the worse that they do, the better that I come off. And so
yeah.
there was one show I was so nervous for, and then everybody kept bombing, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill it." And then I went up there, and because I regained that confidence from everyone else screwing up, like the show went over really well because I was just like, "All right, let's do this," and I just didn't care.
So, could you give us a synopsis of what kind of jokes you do?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, most of them are pretty dark. I've got a mixture of things that are family related, personal to me. I think everything that I do relates back to me at somehow. Even
Mm-hmm.
some of the stuff that's a little more like, how in the hell does that relate to him? You know, um, I think there's always something like. So I'll give you a few examples. So this is a new one that I'm working on. So going back to I grew up very poor. My mom, I lived in a trailer with my mom and my siblings. We were living in a double wide trailer that had 12 different kids, 3 different adults. So I'll give you a joke that it kind of centers around that and my mom a little bit, which is life is hard right now, and for everyone right now it's hard, but for me, my life has always been hard. As a kid, there were times where we'd go without food. There's times we'd go without electricity. But my mom tried her hardest. She really did. But she always made time for what was most important to her: cheating on her husbands. And so that's a new one
Okay.
that I was working on. And then so stuff like that, like about my family, about having a big family. Like I talk about how my parents, both have a ton of kids. I say my dad, he gave me the safe sex talk when I was 12. When I was 15, he had his 5th kid, and I realized I probably shouldn't be taking his advice.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so stuff like that. And then, just stuff like mostly one-liners. One that usually goes over very well is I think you can tell a lot about someone by the kind of car they drive. If they drive a sports car, they're probably an adrenaline junkie. If they drive like a smart car or a Prius, they're probably very frugal. If they drive a truck, they probably fuck their cousin. And so that one goes pretty good. And then stuff like about just random stuff, movies. Yeah, I don't know how you are
Just
with.
random. Do you do? I thought I read that you did jokes about mental illness. Is that? Do you go into that?
A little bit. I mean, so kind of talking about how we did that. I did that joke about my dad getting me like pen, paper, and a razor blade. For Christmas. Stuff like that.
I mean, it's so politically correct now. When I worked in IT, and if you say something a little bit off, Like one time I said, you got Facebook. My son has Facebook. You can hook up. And right away, the guy next to me, no, you can't say no.
Yeah.
But in my day, hookup just meant get
Yeah,
together.
like talk or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and now if you say Netflix, you're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Like, hey, yeah, Netflix and yeah, exactly. Now, actually, I've actually gotten a little Facebook drama earlier today because, there's everybody wants to be like the gatekeepers of this is what you can say, this is what you can't say. And the whole point of comedy is to be pushing the boundaries. And the point of open mics in the comedy world is to see if something works. I've done jokes that were a little racial before, but if I do them, I'm going to go and do it in front of whatever that race is. And if I get laughs, that's the approval I need. If I don't get laughs or if I get booed off stage, well, then I know I probably shouldn't do that joke again. But you have to be able to do it, or else how are you supposed to know?
Yeah. So I take it this is part-time.
Yeah,
I mean, full-time?
It was a full-time gig for me for a while, and then obviously COVID hit, and
nobody want to make jokes then.
Yeah,
right? Or go out.
Yeah.
Bars closed. That must have hurt you a lot, huh?
Well, the good news was I had started another job anyways. Because for my shows, generally, there's some people who will hire me, but generally I book my own shows. I sell my own tickets. So there was several shows that I had lined up that could have been really nice paydays that got held back, that I'm still trying to get all the pieces back together and stuff like that. But it's been tough, right? I haven't been able to do a real show since
March.
Yeah, at least March.
Yeah.
Because, yeah,
it's tough. I talk to people all the time about, the mental illness effect that this virus has gotten everybody crazy.
Yeah, I will say, like, one thing that was for me, again, being like the best part for me about comedy was the social aspect of it. I loved after stage. Number one, I just like the validation. I go and do something and it's really good, and people come up to me and they're like, "Oh, we loved it. We love this joke. We love that joke." That makes me feel good. Then you have the just hanging out with people after the show, drinking drinks, dancing, stuff like that. I live for that. And now,
That's great.
the bars are closed. Like I can't even go out really and get a real drink. And like I tried to go to Outback the other day, and they were only letting one person at the bar, like one party on each side of the bar. So if you were one person alone, then you'd have the whole side of the bar to yourself. And so it's like that totally defeats the purpose. Like I want to go and hang out and meet new people, and it's hilarious because thinking back to it, because now you can't get within 6 feet of people. I've literally ordered drinks before and taken a couple of sips and then given it to the person next to me and been like, "Hey, I don't like this. You can have it." And
God.
that was okay. And they did that. Like they would drink it. And now it's like I can't even imagine that.
You can't even shake the person's hand now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's tough on everyone. Well, hopefully this vaccine will hopefully clean it all up within, I'm hoping April, May, but we'll see.
I just wish we would have never shut down. I'm just like, let all the ones who are going to die, let them die, and then everyone else.
Well, that was Trump's idea, I believe.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Well,
yeah, I mean, that's terrible.
Well, hey, I'm like, if here's my thought. I'm like, if you're at high risk, yeah, you should definitely stay at home. Everybody else, it's like, let's just get sick, let's get this over with, and just move on. But I'm not a scientist either, so I can't say that. That's just the selfish, my selfish thinking.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I mean, it is mostly pre-existing and elderly people that have a real bad time with it.
Yeah, and I love my grandma, but she's had a good life, Well,
I had a roommate. They actually put 2 people in a small cube, and she said something like, "Yeah, that's my grandfather. He's 70. Why doesn't he get just on with it already?"
Yeah, right.
And she was dead serious. So I was like, I'm not talking to you.
whenever like the coronavirus first broke out, like way back, like right before, uh, Bill Burr, he released a special on Netflix called Paper Tiger, and he's got a whole bit about how he needed a new uh, like an outbreak or something, like just to take care of like half of the population. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
once it broke out, that's all I kept thinking about was like, man, I wonder how he feels now. And then he did that monologue on SNL, and everyone bitched about it, and it was good. And
What was it about? I don't think I
he did a
saw it.
bunch of different stuff about, I can't even remember off the top of my head because it's not like anything. It's not like it was.
He was making fun of the virus,
No, it wasn't even.
pretty
It
much.
wasn't
Oh,
about the virus at the time, but I think he made like
okay.
maybe some transgender jokes or something like that, and
Oh,
everybody was like all up in arms about it. Like, oh, like it's so funny too how everyone always says, like, oh, I was literally shaking at this monologue. It's like if you're shaking over something that somebody said, I mean, we're talking about
hey,
mental
leave
health
it.
here, but like you got to get some help, At that
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
it's like you can't let somebody else's opinions, I think, weigh on you that much. And if you do, like seriously, yeah, you got to get some help. Oh, I know what I remember what it was. It was
Okay.
he did talk about the pandemic a little bit, but he was also talking about how like white women have like hijacked the woke movement, and how like that's the only people who get upset. You can make a joke about like black people, and the people who are going to get upset about it are white women.
I find the more I can joke around, the better I feel. Um, I can't be serious too long
Yeah,
because it just brings me down. And I love comedians. I love to laugh and I love to make jokes, even though sometimes they're so dry that people don't get it.
I almost like I. There's times where well, again, back in the day where we used to be able to go out and get drinks. I would just go to the bars and just like mess with people and just say just whatever wild thing that I could think of. And like, even if they didn't laugh, it was just enough for me, like, just because it gave me a smile on my face, and like you said, you smile, you laugh, you get endorphins.
And you also get attention, like you mentioned earlier. I mean, I always starve for attention because my parents were like, my father come home and he used to have a ham radio shack.
Mm,
He'd go into his shack and that'd be it. You never saw him.
mm.
And then my mother really didn't talk to us that much either. So we were always competing for, who can talk the loudest.
Well, even like what I would consider my first real stand-up set was when I was probably 13 or 14, and my family was sitting at the dinner table, and I was just in an energetic mood one night, and I got up and in front of my family and didn't really have any jokes written, just was kind of talking and being crazy, and they were just loving it, and yeah, I mean, so I would do this. I mean, I would just get attention, even in school. I would get all my work done because it was important that I got things done, but I was pretty smart, so I'd finish everything up, and then I would go and like mess with the teachers or like, mess with the girls in their class, and just I just had to be doing something, and yeah, it had to be on me, and if it wasn't, then I'll
Yeah,
that's what makes me upset. I have a friend who just like unfriended me on Facebook out of the blue.
really.
I had no knowledge, like I don't even know what I did to make him like upset with me, and someone I hung out with a lot, and you know, I didn't even really see him as a close friend. I was just upset. I just get upset thinking, oh, somebody might not like me. That
Hmm.
upsets me.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And there's so many things that you can do that upset people. And if you don't recognize social cues as well as I don't recognize social cues, I get in a lot of trouble. So I basically just pick my friends, a couple here, a couple there, and that's my social life, and I'm happy with it now. So it took a long time.
That's what confuses me though, is because I am really good at reading cues and like didn't see any cues or anything. So I'm kind of like, man, maybe I'm just I don't know. I don't know what I did, but
People will get upset about anything. Believe me. I mean, I talk about Trump a lot to my son because he likes him and I don't like him, and we get in these arguments. And like, if I bring it up, he'll be like, "Oh, that's all you ever talk about is Trump."
That's interesting that, with you being older, it's kind of like roles are reversed there.
He's the Michael J. Fox of my family. He's the businessman, and I'm the crazy liberal father. So it works out. It works out.
Yeah, my dad, my dad's very, actually, I've kind of gotten him over to being like middle of the row, but my dad used to be very conservative, like a very conservative, and he was an atheist, and my mom was very liberal, and she was like, more religious. And so it was definitely an interesting dynamic growing up, which I do think benefited me because I'm very middle of the road. And I've never was a big believer, but now, now that I'm getting older, I think the older I get, the more I believe in God. But it's, I also have a very like just a weird brain. I was telling my wife the other day that there are several things that happen to me, where I was starting to think like, man, maybe God is real. But then I also thought like, or maybe I'm in a simulation, and the simulation is really just trying to get me to believe that God is real. But if I'm in a simulation and someone's controlling this, then God is still kind of real in a way.
I swear we're all in the Matrix.
Yeah,
I swear.
exactly.
I mean, it almost seems like I'm going to be like happier, and then something will happen. So it's almost like I keep myself in my own little cage where I can't be too happy, or else something happens. So
I feel that. Yeah, I'm like, there's times things are going really, really, really good, and then I'm like, all right, where's that punch in the gut? I'm waiting for it.
Where's the other shoe?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been there.
Well, I got to wrap up. It's past the time people can pay attention. I think it's a 40-minute type thing.
Yes, sir.
But you were a very interesting guest. You have a great radio voice.
Thank you.
Do you want to do my show? I have like sinus problems, and I don't have a good voice for this, but I have a message. I want to get it out. I want people to understand that it's not anything to be ashamed of. And this is what I want to do, because otherwise all my suffering was for nothing.
No, I understand. Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. Gotta get the word out there, and whatever I can do to help too, I'm happy to do it. So once everything's all wrapped up, I'll share this and share all your other episodes and things like that. So hopefully can push some viewers over there too.
Yeah, and you have a podcast as well, right?
Yes, sir. It's called Ha Ha Horrible.
Okay. How's that spelled? H-A-H-A?
Yeah, HAHAHORRIBLE. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you, like a website or anything?
Anybody who wants to check me out can check me out on either Facebook or Instagram under Ryan Cunningham Comedian. You just go into Google and you type Ryan Cunningham Comedian, and I'm pretty much the only one. So my stuff is right there at the top. And check out the podcast, Ha Ha Horrible. Okay,
and everybody that lives in Raleigh can see you where?
Nowhere right now.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, nothing going on for, I don't know. I'm probably going to book a show here soon, but
do you put that out on the website or anything?
No website. Just everything is either on Facebook or Instagram. That's pretty much how you can keep up. The best way to keep up with actual shows is going to be on my Facebook page, just Ryan Cunningham Comedian, and Instagram. If you're just looking for bits or little clips of my podcast, then that's the place to go. There is Instagram.
Okay. Sounds great. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I think you're gonna have to fill in for me next couple of weeks, because I've had this hoarse throat for about 2 weeks. I can't really talk too well, so I'll probably wind up cutting a lot of it out.
Well, you sound good on my end, so it sounds all right. So hopefully you don't have the COVID. You can keep on rolling.
You've been a great guest, and thank you for coming on the show. And we'll catch up to you later on your podcast.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Okay. That was Ryan Cunningham, comedian. And I think it's very important that you do laugh and take a little bit of the power away from the beast, depression. I really enjoyed the show. Nice talking to him, a very nice person. And if you want to reach him, check out his Facebook page that I'll be putting up on the description, as well as his Instagram. See some of his work. I'm going to put up all my information rather than bore you with it here. My email, my Twitter account, and Facebook, and Instagram. Don't forget to go out and post or check me out or give me some likes or just start following me would be great. And I really appreciate you doing that. And I will catch you next time on OTR, Achieving Mental Health for Real. Take care of yourself. We'll see you next time.